let's open in prayer and we'll get started. Father, we're so thankful for this opportunity that we have to serve you, to love you, we commit our time and our energies to you. We're thankful for what's going on in our country right now. You told us that we're in all things we're supposed to give thanks, and so that's what we need to do, is give thanks. We pray for our country. We pray for the salvation of our president and vice president, and for all those other people that stand against you. There's still hope for them because they still have breath. And so help people to get into their lives that would allow the Holy Spirit to work in their lives so they can continue to cause her to be healed through, I don't know what this heart thing was that she did, but she also has cancer, and we pray that you would just help her through all of this to grow in grace and knowledge of you, and may this illness draw her closer to you. We pray for Ed and his wife, Marlo, that are still not feeling well because they're getting over COVID. Please give them strength, and we just appreciate the fact that they're here with us when they come, and just raise them up and give them strength. Pray for all the Awana kids right now that are going to go into game time and their Bible memory. Help them to remember the things that they studied. And thank you for all the workers that are working with these kids. May each one be influential in the lives of these young people, that they too would grow in grace and knowledge of you. We love you, Lord. We just commit this day to thee, and we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I don't believe in lecturing. I will share, but I expect participation. And so if I ask a question, I will wait till somebody answers. And that, if you don't want to answer for 10 minutes, I can wait 10 minutes. I can just sit down and wait, okay? So the topic tonight is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. It's on finances, and the question that Ed had was, why can't we get our finances under control? All right. So I want to just open this up to the class, and I want to get some ideas, and then we'll get into the stuff I have, but I want to see how much of the stuff you think is covered in what I'm going to give. So why can't people get their finances under control? What are some reasons?
The allure of materialism.
The allure of materialism. Okay. What other reasons?
Kind of the same, but wrong priorities.
Wrong priorities.
It takes work.
What? So what do you think he means by finances under control? What are we talking about?
In line with the scripture, like spending your money how God would want you to.
Okay. So what ways do we get out of control? I mean, what does it mean to be out of control with your finances? I'm just out of control. I mean, I'm sure every one of us, including me, has been out of control with their finances. What does that mean?
Maxed out many credit cards.
Maxed out credit cards.
Spending more than they earn.
Spending more than they earn. Andy, you have any ideas?
I'm thinking.
Andy's thinking. By the way, all the people that are on Zoom right now, do me a favor. If you have the capability of letting me hear you, would you turn your microphone on and say, hi, this is? and then give me your name.
Hi, this is David Dupenning.
Hi, David. Okay, next.
Hi, this is Melanie.
Hi, Melanie.
Hi.
Who else?
Hi, this is Sandy
Sandy who?
Spinner.
Oh, I see you. Hi, Sandy. Anybody else?
This is Roland and Lillian.
Roland. Okay, you were kind of quiet.
Yeah, Lillian is here with me too.
Okay, good.
Want to move back there so you can see them?
Yeah, we could do here.
We're good.
This to a gallery view,
Yeah.
so that way you can see everybody a little bit better.
Okay.
We can move this here. We can rearrange these chairs, move the lectern up here, and then that way you can turn and they can look at you a little more closely too.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
All right, so.
Yep.
With an emphasis on loud?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, here,
What are you doing?
we're moving closer.
Oh, I see. I
So-
left it plugged in. I thought it was falling over.
So I
And
can
was
see.
like,
Yeah, this,
all right, can you see everybody okay?
yeah, we can see everybody
All right,
okay.
Good. All right.
And
have a
everybody
good
can
clap.
hear okay, so, all right, so here's what I've got. Why do, I think that there's about 96% of people who are interested, who have finances, who have income, they fail to get their finances under control. I do financial seminars in churches all over the world, actually. I've done them in Guam, Hawaii, and in Utah. That's really out of this world. But there's a lot of people that are having problems getting their finances under control. And so I'm going to give you some reasons I think people are out of control with their finances. Number one, we as a society have been taught to be consumers, not stewards. So when you've heard of the consumer index, I mean, it's drilled into us that we're all consumers. So if you check the statistics for people that are going to malls and everything, they lump us all into that group of consumers, right? So let's talk about what a consumer is. This is a definition of consumer. It comes from the word consume, which Webster defines as to take, to do away with completely, to spend wastefully, to squander. It's a term Madison Avenue coined that caused many people to think of their self-worth in terms of what they can purchase or possess. The term implies that our purpose in life is to consume, right? What do you think of that definition? That's what Webster says. Is he wrong?
Not wrong. It's a good definition, but it shouldn't be how we live.
Nope, it's just a definition. So if you're a consumer, that's not a very pretty word for yourself. I don't think it builds you up any, does it? So now, so we've been taught to be consumers, not stewards. What is a steward? Well, Webster defines a steward as someone who protects or is responsible for money, property, and so forth. So they protect it. They don't use it up. Another definition is a person whose job is to manage the land and property of another person. So I think one of the biggies why Christians can't get their finances under control is because they don't understand who their finances belong to. It's not yours. We are stewards. It's all God's. As my kids were growing up, they would complain, Dad, Mom, Christy's in my room. And honestly, we did this. We would tell them whose room? Because it wasn't their room. It was God's room. I said, now, and it took a while for them to understand that, but they finally got it. And they would say, Mom, I'm trying to take care of God's room and Christy's in here. So crazy things go on, okay? So let's talk about what consumers do and what stewards do for a little bit. First off, a consumer actually buys items on credit. Okay? So they go out and they see something they want and they just flip out the credit card. They don't think about it. They just think, I got credit available, I'm gonna buy it. That's a consumer. But a steward buys most everything with cash. How many is buying everything with cash the smart thing to do? What do you think?
Some people need to do that, but I started using a credit card to buy stuff when I didn't have 3 hands to hold kids. And it was much easier just to be able to do that and keep my kids from being taken from me.
Okay.
But we still pay it off every month.
Yeah, so you treat the credit card as cash. That's a good way to do it.
I agree. I do the same thing.
Okay, why is it better to use cash than charging it though? Does anybody have any ideas why it would be better to use cash instead of a credit card?
No opportunity to let it just slide to the.
An opportunity to let it slide to the next month, okay?
You can feel the money.
You can feel the money. But you can feel the credit card too.
Yeah, but not as much in the moment.
So what does it?
You feel it going out of your hand or you feel it coming into your hand.
So what's the advantage or disadvantage of being able to feel the money go out or come in?
You know it's gone for good. And it's not put off to another day.
So if I hear you correctly, you're saying there's a psychological advantage of using cash instead of the credit card. By the way, that is a proven fact. It's also a practical fact for me. You know, I like to eat out at restaurants. And sometimes I don't want my wife to know that I'm eating out at restaurants. Every time I use the credit card, when the credit card statement comes, she knows I ate out. There's been more than one time I've gone into the store, into the restaurant, and I had $20 in my pocket, in my wallet. And honestly, when I sat down and I looked to see how much I had was $20, and this was one of the times I didn't want my wife to know, I could not bring myself to spend the $20. So I left. So there is a psychological advantage. And another thing, a lot of times if you can just throw down a credit card, it's kind of mindless. You don't have to think about it, but to go in your wallet or your pocketbook and pull that money out and look at it, and then your mind starts thinking and you go, do I really need this item? Do I really want to spend this money on that? So it's a psychological thing. So, by the way, I use credit card, but we do pay it off, and I play the game. I call it playing the game. Some of you may be financially out of control. You cannot control the credit card. If that's the case, stop using the credit card. I use the credit card because I am the consummate cheapskate. And like when I go and get gas, I get 5% off with my credit card. And so we pay it off every single month. But at the end of the whatever term we decide, we get to go and collect 5 cents on the dollar back. And that reduces the price of the gas too. So if you do it that way and you're treating your credit card as cash, it's still better to use cash for the incidentals, where it makes you think about spending that money. Okay? All right, so how about this? I'm throwing this stuff out and see if you agree with me. How about a consumer buys on impulse? Have you ever bought something on, you just went out and did something and spent money impulsively? I think we've all done that.
Yep.
But if we all do that all the time, that's why we get out of control. We see something we like, somebody tries this. Some salesman comes along. And by the way, I have done myself horribly through the years as far as doing things impulsively without thinking them through. And so a good steward, though, plans purchases and considers what the impact would be on their wealth building goals. By the way, do you have some goals financially? Like, do you have a goal of being debt free? Do you have a goal? And when I say being debt free, of having your house paid off, all your cars, and I'm not a hypocrite right now because I have 2 houses paid off and I owe nothing to anybody. And we have 3 cars. So I'm not bragging, I'm just saying my wife established goals and then beat me over the head to make sure that we kept those goals. I find in the family, tell me if I'm wrong, one of you is a spender and one of you is a saver. Is that true?
Actually, for us, both of us are probably a little bit more on the saver side.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. How about you?
I would say we're both savers.
You're both savers too. All your married life?
I know, well, because we didn't have any money to spend at the beginning.
Okay. All right, anybody else? How many of you guys out there, one of you is a spender and one is the saver? Participate.
I used to be really a big, this is Melanie, sorry, cheapskate when I met my husband. And then he was a big spender and I was a big saver. I don't know. He probably still is a little bit more of a spender. I don't know that I save more than he does now, but I think about it 10 times longer before we do something. So I worry more over it and think longer.
Okay. Anybody else?
This is Karen. I would say Gary is a saver and I am a tight-fisted with money.
That means you're both savers.
Well, he can spend the money for something he wants or needs. He thinks about it, he's planning, but I have a very hard time spending money for anything.
Okay, so he is the spender and you're the tight-fisted one. Correct?
Yeah, but he's not like out of control spending. He
You know
spends
what?
he saves money too.
I understand, but I'm not saying people that are out of control. I mean, there are some of us that are not out of control, but our tendency would be one saver and one's the spender.
Yeah.
Even if it's not out of control.
Yeah, not saying that the spender is an out of control spender, but just their tendency is to spend. Well, their tendency is to save.
Right. Karen, in your instance, I would say you're the saver and your husband's a spender, but he's not an out of control spender. Make sense?
Yeah, but he would like save a lot of money too. He doesn't, he thinks about something, he plans, he waits and like that. He's like the normal saver. I'm just overboard.
No, and I understand that. As a matter of fact, again, we're talking about stewards. And it sounds like he's a good steward, but he's the spending steward and you're not the spending steward. So it's okay. Anybody else?
Well, when our marriage started out, I was really, I guess you'd call stingy. I mean, I'd look at every penny. My wife didn't go along with that too much. And I think now, after many years we've been married, I think we've kind of both come pretty much to, I mean, we don't frivolously spend anything, I don't think, but we've kind of grown to be the same. Of course, that's in 50 years or
Yeah.
more.
Well, and I found that through the many years with Peggy and me, we've kind of balanced each other out. She is more of a spender than she used to be, and I'm less of a spender than I used to be. But she is the saver, and I'm the crazy one out there. So, all right. So, a consumer buys on impulse, a steward plans purchases, okay? Now, a consumer spends every penny earned each month. So, a steward buys most everything, I'm sorry, a steward lives on less than they make. Okay, that's the next thing. So, a consumer does what he knows best, is he consumes it all. And even the saver is, or the steward, just lives on less than what they make. All right, let's go on. A consumer is influenced by adult peer pressure, trying to always keep up with the Joneses. They buy bigger homes, expensive clothing, new cars, and lots of toys. Okay, so I'm just wondering, is there anybody that used to, let's say used to, they'd see somebody with a new car or some new clothes and they felt like, you know, I deserve a new whatever. Anybody like that out there? See, there's supposed to be some transparency here. Why am I the only one that has to confess his sins to the rest of the world?
Kevin, God taught you these lessons so that you could teach the rest of us not to fall in those pitfalls.
I gotcha. Like you already are not falling into these pitfalls, but you know, by the way, what you're learning today is part of some of the stuff that I do in my seminar. And it's, even if you're not guilty of any of this stuff, when I talk about the consumer business, there are people, you know, there might even be kids that you know, like from your own family, that need this kind of information so they don't end up out of control. Okay, so a steward bases purchases on value rather than appearance. All right, so if you want to be a good steward, don't be going out there just because it's glitzy. Pastor laughs at me because I have a Prius. Okay, and I was I've been in my Prius next to a 2010 Corvette. You know what? I can go further in my Prius than that guy in his Corvette can go. Mine might not be as pretty. I guarantee you it's more comfortable. Has anybody out there rode or driven a Corvette before?
Two of my brothers in college went together and got a used Corvette. Had tons of problems with it, but it was so uncomfortable.
So you rode in it. I won't mention my brother-in-law's name because he's already in heaven. But he had like 3 kids and a wife, of course, and he bought a Corvette. And he drove up to my house and asked me if I wanted to ride in it. And you know, if you've never ridden in a Corvette, when you look at a Corvette, they're really cool. But if you ever drive in a Corvette, and I didn't even drive it, I just rode in it, it was so uncomfortable. So I like to use an illustration of a Corvette and a Chevette. Y'all remember what the Chevette was?
Nope.
That was way before Andy's time. You had a Chevette? It's this dinky little sedan, 4 doors. Did you have 4-door or 2-door?
4 doors with the trunk kind of thing.
With the trunk kind of thing. And compared to a Corvette, they're ugly little cars, aren't they? But here's what happens. When you buy that brand new Corvette and you drive into the church parking lot with it, and guess what everybody's going to say? Nice car. Wow, that's a nice car. You know what they say next week? Hi. Because it's worn off already. And it's now just your car. And so if you bought that car to impress people, you will impress them on the first time. And then it's gone, that impression, that first impression. So don't buy things. So a steward lives on basis purchases on value rather than appearance. Another, consumers spend little or no time on establishing a retirement plan. Why do you think I say that?
It's about the right now instead of the future.
It's the here and now. Does anybody think of any biblical principles that are being violated when they don't put money aside? For the rainy day or snow?
I don't
Anybody?
know if it is a biblical principle as such, but I know there's been times when God has impressed us with a need of that someone else has or something. And if you don't have money to meet that need and live up to what God is asking you to do, it's really difficult.
How about for your retirement years? Should we just live for today? Or do you think there's something in the Bible that tells us that maybe we should put something aside?
We never wanted our children to have to pay for our elderly years.
Okay.
Because, you know, a lot of people are doing that now. Their elders not only live with them, which is fine, I support that, but they're having to take out of their own paychecks to support their elders instead of the opposite way.
Right.
And there is a verse, but I don't know what it is.
Oh, I think
Lay up your treasures for your children, not your children for you, or something.
I don't know that verse.
No.
You should lay up your
There's
treasures in
something for
heaven.
your children's children.
How about look to the ant?
Yeah.
They work in the summer so that they can eat in the winter. And there's different seasons of our life. And so one day you will not be able to work. And so you need to be setting something aside for the day that you cannot work. Okay? Now, so a steward spends lots of time planning financial future. You know, again, Jesus is coming back. I know exactly when he's coming back, by the way. You know that Bible verse that says we don't know the day and hour? I think that we're misinterpreting that, because what's going to happen, I'm going to finish my basement, and the minute it's finished, Jesus is coming back. Right? I mean, isn't that we do these? Yeah, I know I'm being blasphemous. Sorry about that. So,
How long is it gonna be before you finish your basement?
well,
One time, huh?
please hurry. It's a, it's a 1 month project that started last April.
Yeah.
So you figure it out.
So the verse that my mom was thinking of was Proverbs 13:22. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. The wealth of a sinner is laid up for the just.
Very good. Okay. All right, let's go on. How are we doing? I think we're doing okay here. 7:09. Cool. All right. Consumers are rarely content. Would you agree with that?
Mhm.
What's the proof of that? What's the proof that consumers are not content?
You have to buy just one more thing to be happy.
Okay? Not even just one more thing. They just they're not happy unless they have more and more and more. I remember when you were a kid and you wanted that special toy for Christmas and you got it. How long did that special toy intrigue you? Probably at least the next day. Okay. But a steward has learned to be content. And then finally, consumers have this philosophy. It's all about me, me, me. But the steward has learned to share. Okay? Does anybody have anything that they'd like to add to this section that we talked about, consumers and stewards?
I think from if we're thinking about it from a Romans 12:1-2 perspective of being transformed by the renewing of our minds, I really like what you mentioned at the beginning of just the mindset that's different, where stewards really are their perspective and their understanding is that they are managing the material things they have for someone else.
And
everything
who is
they
that?
have belongs to God.
Everything. That's
so
right.
therefore, what I use needs to be used for God in meeting my needs, in meeting the needs of others, and taking care of all of the areas of responsibility that I have as well. So if we're going to have moved from that consumer mindset to that stewardship mindset, we really need to dig into that understanding and that view of our finances.
Very good. Anybody else?
I think it's a heart issue. Their heart is not on things above, but right here on earth. As long as they get what they want, they're happy.
So do you know a verse that would talk about that?
Not right offhand.
How about if any man love the world? Let's see. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. That's John 2:15. 1 John 2:15. And so if you're, again, it's just so important that when you are talking to people who are financially out of control, if they're Christians, you need to bring that kind of stuff, this kind of stuff out and talk about the fact, so where is your focus? You just bought this new car. Why did you buy a brand new car? What motivated you to do that? And so when you're counseling people that are just out of control, they're in control of their own life. And we need to have God control and not just do whatever we think what is right in our own eyes. And sometimes it's hard to just point that stuff out. Okay. All right. So my next section is, what does God say about consumers and stewards? All right. Well, Proverbs 22:7 says this: the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. And that word servant means slave. How is a borrower a slave to the lender? That's not a rhetorical question.
Oh, I thought it was.
Well, I mean, when you've been lent some money, there is always a date usually that you have to pay it back. And you're going to try to do, well, you're going to try to see to it that you get it paid back, but it's always a struggle. And the borrower is always there saying, where's my money? You promised you'd pay it back. So there's always that in the back of their minds, I guess.
Well, I'm in the mortgage business, and I want you to know that that mortgage is a chain about people's necks. I remember a fella and his family wanted to go to the mission field. They had no debt except for their house. Guess what? They never made it to the mission field, because at the time they could not sell their house. And so in that particular instance, that person was not able to fulfill an obligation he felt that he had made to the Lord because of a debt he had to a man or to a bank or a mortgage company. And so he, wouldn't you agree, was a slave to the mortgage company? And by the way, he never made it to the mission field. Just never made it. So I think, and some people are slaves to many more than one lender. You have mortgage companies, you have car companies, automobile financing, you have credit cards, you have student loans, you have, there's, how many lenders can we have? Personal loans. I'm tempted to tell you about something, but I'm not going to, because one day I'd like we're gonna do my seminar of how to get out of debt in 5 to 7 years, including your mortgage, using money you're already making. It allows you to eat and clothe yourselves, tithe and do everything you're supposed to, and you can still get out of debt in 5 to 7 years. So if you're skeptical, talk to Pastor Sen and say, when are we going to be able to have that seminar? Because I don't believe it. So, and I'll show you it works. Okay.
Kevin, is that a one-day thing or like something you do as a class over weeks?
I do a 3.5-hour seminar like on a Saturday morning.
Kevin, that's exactly the thing that I did. As I said, I was so stingy, and we did get a loan for our house. And I saw all that money I'm paying out for interest. And we just kind of scrimped and saved. And paid it off in about 7 years. And I've never borrowed since then about anything. And I tell you, it's very freeing.
So you had, how long ago was that?
Oh, many years ago. Let's see, probably 1970s.
Houses were a lot less expensive then, weren't they?
Absolutely. But I was
But-
making a lot less money too.
Money then, who didn't you?
Yep.
Yeah, here's the thing. To me, it doesn't matter whether it was $100,000 or 300,000 or 400,000. Because I know how much money you have to make for that kind of loan. I know that there's enough money in your budget to do exactly what Dave did. Pay that loan off in 5 to 7 years. Maybe 8 or 9 years. What if it was 10 years? Isn't that better than 30? Last time I checked, it was. So you need a plan, and you need to a plan to work, and you need to work your plan. Okay. All right. So let's go on. We talked about this, and you probably don't understand. You probably agree with me. Most of you will, but you say, I can't afford to do this. But Malachi 3:10 says, bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. Let me just tell you something. If you say, I tithe sometimes, what I'm hearing is, I never tithe. Okay? Do you agree with me or disagree with me?
Well, if you don't tithe, I mean, if you're giving 10%, you're giving 10%. If you're tithing, you're giving at least 10%. If you're giving 10% sometimes, then that's like 5% or 4%. So it's not really a tithe.
Dictionary definition of tithe is the 10th part.
Tithe means the 10th part, exactly. And honestly, I used to work with a guy that did the same seminar I do, and he had a plan for people. It was totally unbiblical. But he says, listen, if you've never tithed before, do it this way. Start with 2%. And then in a month or two, work up to 4%. And then in a month or two, work up to 6%. Until you finally make it up to 10%. And I would tell him this. I said, so when you told your kids to go clean their room and they didn't want to, did you say, well, go clean 2% of your room? And by the time they were 18, they'd be up to 100% of their room? No, it doesn't work that way. By the way, I think this topic of tithing is under preached in every church, including ours. Why do I say that? First off, a lot of preachers like to go to Malachi and say, because if you don't tithe, the destroyer is going to come. But that's not the focus of what tithing is all about. What do you think the most important part of this verse is? It says, prove me now, herewith saith the Lord of hosts. He says, test me if I will not open you the windows of heaven. Now that sounds horrible, doesn't it? If you begin to tithe, God's going to open the windows of heaven and he's going to clobber you, right? Is that what the sense of this verse is saying? Tell me, somebody.
course not.
So why do we beat people over the head? And why do people say, oh, now he's going to talk about money? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, because there's many other places, we don't have time to go into it now, but many places where he says, if you give, I'll give back, and I'm going to press it down, and I'm going to keep pouring it, and I'm going to shake it about until it's overflowing. Now that's a real threat, isn't it? Those of you say, I can't afford to tithe. What you're saying is, I don't believe God. Sorry, I'm real point blank on this one. We have been tithing ever since we were married and before. I make less money than most of the people that are listening to this class right now. I make less money. Yet I have 2 houses that are completely paid for. So do you think I'm going to take credit for that? Of course not. First off, whose house is it? It's God's house. His philosophy is, oh no man anything. So even on the pittance, sometimes, I own a mortgage company myself, and there were many times that the secretary made more money than I did. When you're in the mortgage industry, you're not salaried, at least not I've never been salaried in the mortgage. I work off of commissions. So there's absolutely no security right there. Once you close a loan, you're out of a job. Now you have to go back and get another job and another job. And I'm telling you, we tithed on everything that we brought in, and we have never lacked bread, clothing. Did we ever? Yes, but we control. And I'm telling you, it was, I really believe a large part of this was the fact that God has continued to open the windows of heaven on my family. Some of you may be retired and you're on a fixed income. God doesn't say if you're on a fixed income, you shouldn't tithe. He doesn't say, I understand, because God does not understand when you disobey him. And what's really sad about this is, I don't look at God standing, he's going, why aren't you tithing? I want to turn the spigot on, but you're not tithing. I can't turn the spigot on because you're not pleasing me. The Bible says without faith, it's impossible to please God. And so in counseling situations, honestly, I ask the question. Now I'm in the mortgage business. I will ask even lost people, do you tithe? Really? Well, the Bible doesn't say just God's people. Say we all should tithe. So I ask, because if you don't tithe, where is your focus? Where is your focus if you don't tithe?
On yourself.
It's all about me, me, me. And so I just want to let people know that tithing is probably the most important thing in your life to get in control of your finances. But you don't understand. You don't understand how many bills I have. I am buried right now. No, you don't understand. The only reason you're buried is, number one, you focused on yourself, and number two, you're not tithing and you're trusting in yourself to get out of debt. If you would start trusting in God, I promise you, he will open the spigots of heaven and you will be able to pay off your debt. It's a proven fact. I am living proof. 2 houses, all cars, no debt. It's not always been like that, but I guarantee you we have always tithed. I'm going to tell you a story. One time we were newlyweds, and well, not newlyweds. We've been married 5 or 6 years, and we were struggling. We had $100 to our name. We owed $1,500 in back payments. And we were under pressure. And Saturday night, we have this $100, and we have like 7 different creditors we have to pay $1,500 to. And so Peggy and I were going through it, and I had this plan. I was going to take $10 for each of the 7 and give it to them with a letter saying, listen, we haven't forgotten you. We're so sorry. We just don't have any money to pay you the rest. But as soon as this was in the beginning of our mortgage business too, so I'm depending on commissions, right? So I came up with this great idea, and then my wife said, Kevin, we were paid $1,000 about 6 weeks ago, remember? Yeah, we never tithed on it. All I have, my name is $100. Will God understand? Andy, will God understand?
You would understand.
No,
At least.
What
He
about my,
understands our filthy heart.
what?
He understands our wicked hearts. But my question is, what happened in the 6 weeks?
It was an oversight. As we were looking through it, she saw the deposit. I don't know what happened. I don't remember. All I remember is we still owed the $1,000. It might only have been 3 weeks, but it was one of those things. And so now, what about my testimony with these creditors? Is that important?
sure.
It is. Do you think my plan sounded pretty good?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Good.
Okay, Andy said think it sounded pretty good. Okay, so what did we do? Sunday morning, we went to church. We wrote a check for $100 and put it in the offering plate. My testimony with God, and Peggy and I talked about it, is more important than my testimony with the 7 creditors. I had a plan. I think God had a better plan. We put the $100 in, and we did not put the $100 and say, okay, God, open up the windows of heaven. No, we said, God, we're so sorry that we did not tithe on this when we should have. And we just forgot it. The following Tuesday, I went out to lunch with my boss. And you know what? He was bragging about the fact that the hailstorm that happened a week ago had damaged his Jeep. And it only cost him $800, but they gave him $1,500 or $1,400, something like that. And he was bragging on that. So now we're walking into the office complex, and he looks back at my car, which is a white Cutlass Supreme station wagon. And he said, Kevin, you have hail damage. I looked, I says, no, I don't. He said, come on, I'll show you. So he took me over and he pointed out the little dents that were on. I couldn't even see them. He said, you should check with your insurance company. And I did. And do you know how much we got that following Thursday? I did not have to get my car fixed because my car was free and clear. They sent me a check for $1,500. we paid off all of the debt, not just $10 of each one. And God showed himself mighty in our lives. And I'm just telling those of you that may think that you can't afford to tithe, trust God with all your heart. Lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Okay? That is not just preaching. That was true. That was a true story. And I can't tell you how many times God has bailed me out for my foolishness. Okay?
Kevin,
So-
just to say what you're saying, when I was mentioned about paying off that loan, we were tithing the whole time too. I probably never would have gotten it paid off if I hadn't been tithing. And that's my feeling. So just want to make that clear.
It's like that.
We definitely, have tithe and, are at this moment debt free, but we got there in 2012, then I went in the hospital and then we had to get back out of debt again. But what I was going to say, there have been times where we have gotten refunds for money that we were told we owed, we thought we owed, and then suddenly we got a refund and we don't understand why, but it was money we needed right then.
But you really did understand why.
Yeah, I mean, we understood that God why, but the
Exactly.
the system didn't make sense.
God is so good to us financially. But we don't serve him because of finances. We just serve him because we love him. And he loves us. And he doesn't want us to be out of control. Okay? Another verse that talks about that from the New Testament, it says, 2 Corinthians 9:6 says, this is a promise, by the way, he which soweth sparingly shall reap also sparingly. And he which soweth bountifully shall reap also bountifully. Is that a fairy tale? That's what you're going to point out to people who are Christians who are out of control. You take them to verses like this and you say, listen, this is God's word. Will you trust it? But I can't afford it. I'm going to tell you one other story. It's a great story. My brother, I led him to the Lord while my dad was on his deathbed. He had a stroke, and my brother and I were watching my father one night. We spent the whole night together, and he asked me, he said, Kevin, maybe you should tell me how to get to heaven again. And I was able to lead him to the Lord. After my dad died, I finally got back here, and Tim was getting mentored by somebody at Falls Baptist Church in Wisconsin. And so what was really interesting is I love Falls Baptist for what they did for my brother. Well, the guy that was mentoring him wanted to go on vacation, but his transmission went out, and now he was stuck. And my brother called me and said, Kevin, I want to tell you something that was so exciting to me. Dan's transmission went out, and I went and paid to have it fixed. I said, that is exciting. I said, how would you like to have that feeling every single week? Well, how can I do that? I says, do you know what tithing is? He goes, no. I said, well, what tithing is out of every dollar you make, you give 10 cents to the Lord. And so if you make $100, you're going to give him $10. If you make 1,000, you give him 100. If you make 4,000, you give him $400 every single time you get paid. You're going to give him. That's what the Bible talks about as your first fruits. He said, okay. 3 weeks later, he calls me up. He was something like $35,000 in debt. He had no clue. But he called me up and he said, Kevin, when you told me about tithing, now get what his philosophy was right from the get-go. When you told me about tithing, I didn't know how I was going to pay my other bills. You get it? He immediately put God first. Everybody else was second, and he had no clue how he was going to pay everybody else, but he was going to tithe to the Lord. Not because he's going to get bombed over the head because he's disobeying God. No, he just knows, he knew the minute I told him that that was right. And so he did that. And he said, Kevin, let me tell you what happened. My brother was a police officer, and 2 times he was drugged. A car drug him off while he was reaching in, and he got hurt and stuff. And he was waiting and waiting and waiting for insurance money. There was no light at the end of the tunnel for him. This was going to take a long time. He said, Kevin, you know what happened? They settled with me, paid off every one of my debts. And there's money left over to tithe on that money. And you know who he gives the glory to? He said, it wasn't the insurance company that did that. Kevin, you told me what God is going to do, and he did it. And now he can go and he tells his friends and what God did. It was a God thing. It wasn't an insurance thing, because it was the timing, it was the circumstances all pointed to the fact that it wasn't all of a sudden they decided this. God moved in their hearts, and now he's completely debt free on that with those creditors. So you need to you need to write these things down, that things that happen in your own life. And I'm telling you that when people are in trouble financially, they've dug themselves a hole. And there's only one place to look when you're in a hole, and that's up. And you can be the person to help them understand. Number one, if they're lost, it's a great opportunity for you to share the gospel with them. And if they're saved, it's a great opportunity for you to share with them how they can grow in grace and knowledge of our Lord. I mean, it's really, truthfully, honestly, a fact of life that if you'll continue to tithe, and I don't just stop at tithing. Peggy and I also do offerings, and we are so excited when we get to do that. Honestly, Peggy and I, Kevin, we're giving this much. Isn't this great? That's the joy of the Lord. Are you lacking joy in your life? Well, that's because your focus is on you. Well, start focusing on the Lord, and there's no better way to be like God than to give. For God so loved the world that he what? Gave. He gave more than finances. He gave his only begotten son. So you want to be like God? That's one of the ways we can do it, is we can give. Okay? All right. I just feel like I'm just lecturing. But thank you for those of you that are participating when I ask the question.
Kevin, I have a story for you.
Okay.
We worked with a young man once that was out of control financially. And I don't think I've ever seen a happier person when he got out of debt. He realized that as he started paying off one thing after another, how he had more money and could pay off, other things. And it just, obviously snowballed as he could pay more onto the other things. And, we set out a plan, got rid of all his credit cards, but, anyways, he was just like, wow, I really do make a lot of money when I don't have to spend it all on credit card bills and, all this other stuff. In the process, his car broke down and he had to get a different car, but it didn't matter. He still stayed on track. And when he got out of debt, he was the happiest person I've ever known.
Was he a Christian?
He was a Christian before and after, but he had just never put God first in his finances, but he also didn't realize that like he had bought into what, you want something, you buy it kind of thing. And so, yeah, it was,
So was he tithing?
I don't know before, but he began to, yes, that was one of our requirements of helping him.
Okay, cool.
God
Yeah.
provided a better paying job in the midst of all that. And, there was just a lot of things that changed in his life. And some of it was just his attitude when he started hanging out with Christians again and getting more of a spiritual focus. But just, when you think that you are forever going to be weighed down and you cannot make your interest payments, then you do get discouraged. And so it's neat to be able to help someone.
That's for sure. Okay, let's just go on. We're almost done here. Second Corinthians 9:7 says, every man according as he purposeth in his heart, so let him give, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loveth a cheerful giver. I have met people through the years. I was going to church and one of the deacons was really upset because the pastor didn't do his homework. We spent $25,000-$30,000 on possibly purchasing some new land, and did all the perk tests and this, that, and the other. And it turned out that the city said you cannot build a church there; it's not zoned for it. And that deacon became bitter. And as I was talking to him, he says, yeah, they wasted my money. And I just told him, I said, Ray, it wasn't your money. You gave that to the Lord. It was the Lord's money, and you shouldn't be bitter about it. But he never let go of that, and he stopped going to church and all sorts of things. So you never let, when you give, just give it to the Lord, as unto the Lord. He'll take care of his own money. And if somebody misappropriates, guess what? That's not your responsibility. That's theirs. And so you just get the joy out of giving. Okay. And don't give just because I love our preacher, because he's never got up and says, listen, we need this. The minute a preacher locks the doors and say, we're not leaving until we have this goal met, you're not tithing, because you're giving out of necessity. You're just giving money, but you're not tithing. And there are strings attached to God blessing you. One of them is tithing. So if you're giving it grudgingly, you're not tithing. If you're giving it of necessity because somebody needs it, you're not tithing. And he's not going to open the spigot for you. So do it right. Okay.
Evan, I
Sorry
used
about
to
that.
work in the finance office, and it shocked me how many people gave their token $10 or $20 every time they came to a service. But if they didn't show up, they didn't give anything. It's like paying for a show. This way I looked at it. It was interesting to me.
Yeah, I call that tipping God. Okay. So Matthew 6:24 says, no man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. And I want you to know this. Whoever is financially struggling, who's out of control, the goal is not to get out of debt. That's not your goal. We are supposed to glorify God in everything we do. When you focus your life on getting out of debt, you've taken your focus off of God. That means you are serving mammon. You're serving things. You're serving that slave master because you're going to do it. So if somebody is struggling with that, with whatever sin or weakness, the focus should not be getting off of that weakness. the focus should be getting your eyes on God and letting him become your strength. Okay? How about this? Romans 13:8. It says, "Owe no man anything but to love one another." If you're out of control financially, it's because you have not obeyed that verse. The Bible says, "Owe no man." I've heard a lot of preachers say, well, it doesn't really mean that. Sorry. It's pretty clear English to me. Owe no man. Okay? It also says in the next verse, but godliness with contentment is great gain. I'm sorry, not the next. That's 1 Timothy 6:6. But godliness with contentment is great gain. And 6:7 says, for we brought nothing into this world, and it's certain we can carry nothing out. And verse 8 says, and having food and raiment, let us be therewith content. So the bottom line is this, Paul was telling Timothy, be a steward, be a good steward, and be content. And I can guarantee you that if you're out of control financially, it's because you've not learned the biblical principle of contentment. Find your contentment in the Lord. Find your contentment in church with other Christians, doing things that honor and glorify God, and he'll take care of the rest. Okay?
I have a story. One of the most beautiful stories I've ever heard was an autobiography of a man who survived a concentration camp during World War II. And while he was there, he said, Lord, what could I do back for you? And the Lord laid in his heart to tithe part of his bread every day to another prisoner. And that's how he gave back to the Lord.
Amen.
It was beautiful.
That was perfect.
And he survived. Lived to be 94 in that rest home over there on Sheridan.
That is great. Is he a Christian?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Was he Jewish though?
No, he was a believer.
He was a believer that got put in jail. Okay. Put in the concentration camp. Okay. All right. We only have a little bit to go. This will go rather quickly. I want you to know the reason people fail to get their finances under control is the addictive nature of credit and spending. You know, credit allows for instant gratification, pleasure, a false sense of security. So is this a description of drugs or credit? They're both. Yeah, that's for sure. Why is it a false sense of security? Can someone tell me?
Because we're trying to find security and feeling good.
And why is it false?
Because it doesn't last. And God didn't wire us that way.
But why doesn't it last?
Because God didn't wire us that way, for one.
No, I'm talking about credit though.
You got to pay it back.
It's when that first bill comes, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Doesn't last.
Sometimes people ask, I ask a question and you don't know what I'm fishing for.
Mm-hmm.
So you were in the wrong pond.
Yeah, sorry, you got a goldfish instead of a trout.
Karen gave me the trout. Thanks, Karen. See, my wife would be giving me conniption fits right now. You said what? Sorry. They've said I'm harsh. Okay. Another reason, the monthly payment trap. I can afford that payment. I just got a raise. I can afford it. It doesn't work that way. What's wrong with that sentence? I can afford it.
I think the real question should be, is it wise? Is it something that I can use to please God?
Yep. And how about the pronoun I? What biblical principles are you violating when you say, I can afford that? Can you think of any? What are you counting on
Tomorrow.
tomorrow? Tell me about a verse that talks about that. You remember it?
It's the rich man and Lazarus, and he's talking about the counting on tomorrow, and he said you aren't going to have tomorrow.
That's one of the places. There's also Proverbs 27:1. Says, boast not thyself of tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. What's the pot? What could happen to you tomorrow?
Anything. You might die.
You might die. Then you don't have to worry about that debt, do you?
Might lose a job.
You might lose your job. You might have a car accident.
You
Lots
might
of
have
things.
a medical issue that goes through.
Yeah, you might have a medical issue that puts you in the hospital for how long?
3.5 months, almost 4.
Yep. So that's just not a wise way to do it. Okay, here's another reason people are out of control. It's the inability to delay gratification. Number one, under that I have convenience. This would really be convenient. So I don't like to change my oil. So what would cost me $17? I'm going to go and have the oil change because it's more convenient, and I'm going to pay $80. I wonder why I'm in debt. Duh. Now, it's pretty hot outside, and I don't like to cut the grass. And this kid came by, and he'll cut my grass for $30. That's pretty convenient, right? I'm never going to get out of debt with that philosophy. And so, convenience, everything's convenient. How many of you do your major shopping at the 7-Eleven? You go get your milk and bread and everything from the 7-Eleven. It's right down the street from you. It's convenient. Why don't you do that?
It's more expensive.
It's a lot more expensive, right? So that's instant gratification. How about indulgence? You know what? Do you remember the commercial? You deserve a break today. So get out and get away to McDonald's. You never heard. Andy never heard that. How about you, Karen? Did you ever hear it?
Of course.
Even Burger King said, have it your way. Have it your way. See, you missed out on all the good commercials.
Yeah, sorry.
You know, I deserve a break today. I deserve to go to the spa, the ladies say, and spend $150 on an all-day thing or whatever. I just deserve that. And if that's what your mindset is, then that you're gonna always be out of control. And then another thing was appearance, the way it looks. And if that's more important to you than what the functionality is, you're always going to be out of control. And then another problem, we're almost done here, following after get-rich-quick schemes. The Bible says a faithful man shall abound with blessings, but he that maketh haste to be rich shall not be innocent. Some of us I've done it on more than one occasion. I lost $60,000 at one whack, $25,000 at another whack. I mean, pure hard cash, because I was going to get rich. And all I was out was $60,000 and $25,000 and I had a great heart in it, but I wasn't wise. And then one other way is to follow conventional advice. Go See, go find someone that agrees with you. And that conventional advice is going to keep you in debt. Oh, you can afford that. And then finally, keys to getting your finances under control. My first one says, learn to tithe. Learn it quick. Do a thorough Bible study and see all of the blessings associated with tithing. If you really want to get out of debt, you should go to the Word of God and see what God says about tithing. But then once you learn that stuff, believe God and trust Him, and then do it. And you'll begin to get a grasp on God's finances for you. Learn to live on less than you make. Pay yourself first by paying off all your debts before you invest. And build wealth slowly over a long period of time, remembering you are not the owner, but merely a steward of His wealth. And that's what I have for tonight. Were there any questions or comments before we close this in prayer?
Thank you. Very good.
You think it was profitable?
Yes.
Yep. See how I used the financial term profitable? Karen, thank you so much for your participation, and David and the rest of you. You need to learn how to turn your mics on, okay? Although I forget who it was. Someone else talked tonight.
Sandy and Melanie both talked.
Sandy and Melanie, and then the husband and wife.
Roland and Lillian.
I think Roland talked too. Didn't you, Roland?
I believe I did, but we have to switch on. We're using a phone to watch, so I have to keep on switching the screen to unmute and mute.
Well, thank you for your participation, and it was good to be on the phone with you all night. Let's
Thank you,
close
Kevin.
it.
Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much for having you.
All right. Andy, would you close this prayer, please?
Sure. Father in heaven, thank you for this time together. And Lord, thank you just for the principles in your word about finances. Lord, it is true that all things that we need for life and godliness are found in your word and through the knowledge of Jesus Christ. I pray that we can take these principles, reapply them to our own lives. And Lord, as we find ourselves in counseling situations, to look for where there may be a need to address financial issues and to graciously and kindly guide people to the principles found in Scripture to get finances under control. And Lord, as we have opportunity to do that, I pray that your Holy Spirit would work to change our mindsets from being consumers to stewards. Thank you for this evening, Margaret. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Thank you.